Okay, thank you very much, Elaine. So this brings us to the fourth and final day of an incredibly successful Heritage Week. It's been brilliant to see so many people here every lunchtime, and indeed yesterday evening again for John Paul Sheridan. So thanks very much for that. As Elaine said, you'll be able to put questions in the chat box and we'll take them at the end. So today's, we have three speakers and they're talking about our wonderful Russell Library and the collection. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the first, Susan Durack.
Thank you, Helen. Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Durack, and I've been working here in special collections since the early 90s, but I'm in my 42nd year here in the library anyway, and I'm delighted to be here to be giving this talk today. And as Helen mentioned, the talk will be on the history of the Russell Library, and I'm very aware that I am going to be speaking to experts in this area already. But please bear with me, because I'm sure there are people who have not visited the Russell Library and would not be that familiar with its very interesting history. So the Russell Library has long been regarded as a treasure by researchers, teaching staff, students and visitors from home and abroad. It is situated in St. Mary's Square. It is named after Charles William Russell, 1812 to 1880. Who was appointed president in 1857. He succeeded Lawrence Renhen, who had been president from 1845 to 1857. And it was Renhen who was influential in obtaining the services of a distinguished and well-known English architect, Augustus Welby Northmore Pugin. And he designed St. Mary's Square, which includes the Russell Library. We can't go much further in the talk without actually saying something about Pugin himself. He was born in Russell Square in London to August Charles Pugin and Catherine Welby in 1812. He took part in sketching tours in England and on the continent with his father's drawing school from about 1821. Such was his talent that he was commissioned to design Gothic furniture for Windsor Castle at the age of 15. Cardinal John Henry Newman described Pugin as a man of genius, referencing his zeal, his minute diligence, his resources, his invention, his imagination, and his sagacity in research. But he had great fault, he said, as well as merit. As a man of genius, he was intolerant. And there was a time when he might have pulled out of the Maynooth Commission, but dialogue and communication won out, and he continued with the project with agreed amendments. Newman also noted that for Pugin, and I quote, the canons of Gothic architecture are to him points of faith. He was also noted by Pugin's, this was also noted by Pugin's biographer, Rosemary Hill, and where she states that after Pugin's sketching visit to Hamburg in 1834, he returned with an inspired artistic vision. She says, Pugin's dream of a revived Christendom made manifest in art and architecture was at once all before him. Pugin's passion for Gothic architecture is also evident in the number of publications that he brought out, such as Gothic Furniture in 1835, Contrasts, and that's the short title, in 1836, True Principles of Pointed Architecture in 1841, An Apology for the Revival of Christian Architecture in 1843, and A Glossary of Ecclesiastical Ornament in 1844. Pugin paid great attention to detail in all of his wide-ranging design activities. He is described as a designer of buildings, furniture, metalwork, jewelry, textiles, ceramics, wallpaper, and books. Pugin converted to Catholicism in his early 20s. His patron and a friend for the rest of his life, was John Talbot, 16th Earl of Shrewsbury, described as England's leading Catholic layman. It was through Shrewsbury that Pugin worked on other architectural designs in Ireland. These included St. Peter's College, Wexford, St. Aidan's in Enniscorthy, and St. Mary's Cathedral in Killarney, to mention some. So Pugin and Maynooth. As stated, Lawrence Renahan was responsible for acquiring the services of Pugin to design St. Mary's Square, and a capital grant of £30,000 was given for the project, but that was also to include the renovation of our buildings. Money was tight and the original plans were amended accordingly. The college chapel became a separate project later under the design of the architect J.J. McCarthy. And some of you will have listened to John Paul's superb talk on the college chapel this week. The Russell Library was built according to Pugin's plans, but it was not finally fitted out until 1861. Before this time, the library had been located in Dunboyne House. Pugin died in 1852 at the age of 40, and he had had much sorrow in his private life, with his first wife dying 2 weeks after the birth of their first child in 1832, and his parents died the following year, which must have, greatly affected him. Pugin went on to remarry again in 1833 and 1848. The Russell Library is a long room, longish, with 143 feet, with shelving on either side and study tables in the centre. And you'll get a sense of that from the background here, at my background where I'm in the Russell at the moment. The very impressive high hammer beam roof is typical of English Gothic style architecture. The ends of the hammer beam are unadorned, which is characteristic of a Pugin design, where he used an old joint method, and which he also used in his furniture designs. There is a chronological frieze thought to be contemporary, listing prominent church philosophers and saints on the upper side walls of the room. In terms of ornamentation and decoration, Gothic revival motifs such as the fleur-de-lis and the trefoil can be seen throughout the library. Pugin's health deteriorated. He died in 1851, as I said, at the age of 40 of nervous exhaustion, having completed an enormous body of work, mainly in England, which included the design for Big Ben and the interior of the Palace of Westminster. Unfortunately, Pugin did not live to see the Russell Library fitted out, but I am sure he had a vision of what it would have been like with its wonderful collections taking their place there. Some of our listeners may remember that the Russell Library was the main library on campus before the John Paul II Library was built. There was also a reading room, well, essentially a mini library in the arts block with a library desk. When the John Paul II Library was built in the early 80s, there was a major move of the collections from the Russell Library to the arts block, from the arts block as well to the John Paul II Library. The Russell Library then became the research library, housing the historic collections of the college. So that's really where we are at the moment in terms of the Russell Library. And I would just like to acknowledge a wonderful source about Pugin and Maynooth. Pugin at Maynooth, the Neo-Gothic contribution of A.W.N. Pugin to Maynooth College by Jean Meldon, Marion Lyons and Caroline Gallagher. And you will find so much more information in that publication. And it was a great help to me in this talk. And I will leave you now with the last word to Pugin. So in a letter to his wife Jane in 1849, he stated, "The buildings at Maynooth look very grand. It is an immense building with some splendid rooms in it. They seem very pleased with it indeed." Thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the collections. So good afternoon, my name is Alexandra Caccamo and I'm the Special Collections Librarian here at Maynooth. And I'm just going to share my screen with you now. Just give me a sec. So hopefully you can see that now. So yeah, so as I said, I'm the Special Collections Librarian here at Maynooth University, and I'm in the very privileged position of overseeing these fantastic world-class collections. To give you a bit of an idea of the collections, Susan's already given us an overview of the history and of the Russell Library and its significance. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the collections and what constitutes special collections here at Maynooth University. You'll hear me use the term special collections, and just to explain what that is and what it refers to. Special collections not only include rare books, but also archives, manuscripts, maps, art objects, photographs, as well as audio and digital formats. So you can see special collections can be almost any format, but what usually unites them is that they're unique and irreplaceable and rare. They're also managed separately from the main library's collection, and they're handled and accessed and preserved differently to the main collection. And Gretchen, the Conservator here at Maynooth University, is going to tell us a little bit more about that. There are two special collections locations here in Maynooth, the historic Russell Library and also the Special Collections Reading Room over in the John Paul II Library. But I'm going to focus on the special collections held here in the Russell Library today. As you've already heard, the Russell Library houses the collections of St. Patrick's College. From its foundation, the college has had strong links with continental Europe, and this has resulted in a rich diversity of material here in the library. As you can see from this slide, the collection is a very substantial one. There are around 34,000 printed works with imprints from the 15th to the mid-19th century. They include one of the finest theological collections in the country, but they also have there are also other subjects featured, such as science, travel writing, philosophy, music. The collection includes a substantial collection of Bibles, rare books, incunabula, manuscripts, archives, maps. It's quite a very substantial collection, as you can see. We also have and still use a card catalogue, but 60% of our collection is now available to access online, with the remaining 40% being catalogued as part of an ongoing project. This brings us to our oldest item in the collection, and these are the Babylonian cuneiform tablets. Cuneiform means wedge-shaped, and it refers to a system of writing used in the ancient Middle East. These tablets date from between 3,500 to 1,900 BC. In the Russell Library, we have 66 tablets or cones and one seal. The tablets we have here in Maynooth mostly depict normal, everyday things such as economic and administrative concerns. This could be very useful to scholars who want to learn a little bit more about what life was like at the time. In this slide, you can see an attractive blue gable-shaped seal. This seal is from Anatolia in what is now modern-day northern Syria or Turkey. You might just be able to make out the three antelopes depicted on the seal. This is a security seal and would have been passed in trading. This unique collection came to be in the Russell Library through the missionary priest and former student of St. Patrick's College, Reverend Bone. He was an army chaplain serving in the region during World War I and acquired them during his time there. Following his death, his sister gave the tablets to St. Patrick's College, and the tablets are now digitized and are available on the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative website. We also have a manuscript collection, and manuscripts are unique, unpublished, handwritten material. And in the Russell Library, we have both Gaelic and medieval manuscripts. As you can see here, we have 4 Gaelic manuscript collections. These are 4 main collections of Gaelic manuscripts. The images you can see here are from the Murphy manuscripts. They were compiled in the early 19th century by Bishop John Murphy of Cork. He collected these 114 Irish manuscripts, which were transcribed principally by the scribal family O'Longan during the 18th and early 19th century. It was bequeathed to St. Patrick's College in 1848. In this slide, you can see examples of our 3 other main collections. Susan has already mentioned Lawrence Renahan, who was the president of St. Patrick's College in the mid-19th century. He left his collection of around 100 manuscripts to the library. His collection reflects his interest as a church historian. The O'Curry collection consists of over 100 volumes of Gaelic manuscript materials collected or transcribed by Eugene O'Curry. during the course of his academic career as a leading Gaelic scholar and professor of archaeology and Irish history at the Catholic University of Ireland. This collection was transferred to St. Patrick's College, Maynooth, following the closure of the Catholic University in 1909. And finally, the Fermoy manuscripts seen here on the left, which is a collection of 50 Gaelic manuscripts from the library of St. Coleman's College, Fermoy, and was relocated to the Russell Library in August 2013. The Gaelic manuscripts...
Sorry, what did you say?
Sorry. The Gaelic manuscripts at Maynooth are an extremely important collection and represent the rich Irish history of tradition of history, religion and literature from the early 15th to the late 19th century. They provide a valuable contemporary record of the actual spoken language and an insight into the social conditions of the period. They are all listed in a printed catalogue which was begun by Paul Walsh and completed by Pádraig Ó Fionachta. As I said, we have a small collection of medieval manuscripts. They're largely liturgical, devotional, or ecclesiastical, and almost all from continental Europe. The medieval manuscripts are mostly written in Latin, but you can also find French, German, and English manuscripts. Before the advent of print, manuscripts were painstakingly produced by scribes who transcribed and illustrated these works, which could be anything from a page to a volume. These works usually came from monasteries or other religious centres, and so are nearly always religious in subject matter. In this slide, you can see an image from one of our Book of Hours. A Book of Hours, they come in many different forms, but they usually include prayers and readings to be said at different times of the day, hence the name. They often include information on the lives of saints, both locally important and universally honoured. They're beautifully decorated and illustrated with religious scenes, as you can see here. A Book of Hours would have been owned by a lay person and used for private devotion. These lavishly illustrated manuscripts would have been expensive to produce, and only the wealthier of people would have been able to afford an item such as this one. In this slide, you can see examples of our incunabula or incunables. These are the early printed books in our library. They were produced before 1500, and European incunabula date from between 1450 to 1500. And this was the time of the earliest stages of printing in Europe, when movable type was just in its infancy. By their very nature, they will always be defined as rare. We have around 59 incunables in the collection here at Maynooth. They're mostly German. The collection includes, also includes the earliest printing of a contemporary Irish writer, the Franciscan Maurice O'Feely, which was printed in Venice in 1497. You can see from this picture that they look very similar to the written manuscripts, but they are in fact printed, and the appearance is intentional. At the time, people were used to reading transcribed or written manuscripts. It's what they expected from a book and what was familiar to them. Therefore, early printed works reflected these norms. Perhaps unsurprisingly, one of our largest collections is our Bible collection. It spans 8 centuries, the earliest dating from the 13th century. There are over 2,500 Bibles in the collection, with over 2,000 of those being deposited in 1986 by the Hibernian Bible Society. In this collection, there are almost 600 languages represented, and it is often the first time that these languages ever appeared in print. Although the strength of our collection is in its religious and theological material, there are also other subjects represented. Some of the most notable are the scientific and mathematical books in the collection. In this slide on the left, you can see a volvel, or what is called a volvel, and it is a rotating paper wheel chart. These are often found in early astronomy or mathematical books. This volvel is from our copy of the Mariner's Magazine by Samuel Sturmey. Published in 1669, it relates Sturmey's experiences as a sea captain and provides information for sailors. Sturmey wrote in quite a lively style, and some of the sections were used verbatim in Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. In the other image, this is from our copy of the Elements of Geometry, or Euclid's Elements, which was one of the first mathematical works to have been printed and is reported to have had the second most printed editions of any work other than the Bible. It was used as a textbook in mathematics for over 1,000 years and contains some very well-known results, such as the Pythagorean theorem. We also have quite a large pamphlet collection. There are over 12,000 bound pamphlets in the Russell Library. They're mostly printed in Ireland and England, and they would have been produced quickly and cheaply. The pamphlets include a wide array of subjects such as religion, science, politics, medicine, inventions, and travel writing. It is a fascinating collection, and you get a glimpse into the everyday interests and concerns of people at the time. In the slide, you can see the diverse array of subjects such as Irish superstitions, a day out at Howth, and the telescope at Birr Castle. I hope this has given you a bit of a flavour of our fascinating collections here at the Russell Library. It wasn't possible for me to mention some of our other important collections, such as our maps and drawings and things like that, but we hope you will be able to, welcome you sometime in the future for in-person tours and visits. In the meantime, we have a wealth of information available on our Special Collections Library Treasures blog. There is also a YouTube series and a podcast, and I've included the details here on the screen. But if you'd like any more information, please feel free to contact us. I'm now going to pass you over to Gretchen, who's going to tell us a bit more about how we care for our collections.
Thank you, Alex. I'm hoping to tell you guys a little bit more here. Let me just share my screen. Oh. All right. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Gretchen Allen. I'm a book and paper conservator who joined the conservation team here at Maynooth in 2020, literally right before lockdown. So I'm originally from the US, and I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. There's a little bit about me here. I did my BA in art conservation at Scripps College in Southern California before moving to London to complete my master's in book conservation. And I also hold a postgraduate certification in antiquities trafficking and art crime, and that is the analysis and prevention of, not the commission of. I worked for the University of Cambridge for several years before joining the team here at Maynooth. So in addition to my book and paper training, I have also worked in painting, bronze, plaster, and mosaic conservation before deciding to focus on books. So normally I would also be joined by my colleague, Louise Walsworth-Bell, who has been a paper conservator here at Maynooth since 2001, but she has actually been fortunate enough to receive a temporary conservation position at the National Museum in Qatar and will not be back until next year. So what is conservation? What do we mean when we say that? Conservation is a collection of preventive and interventive practices used to keep a collection in good health. The preventive aspect is called collection care, which focuses on the preservation of the collection in a stable environment with mitigated risk factors, and that way you can prevent as much damage as possible. The interventive aspect of conservation comes in when damage has already happened, such as heavy soiling, tears, creases, loss, or water damage, just to name some examples. When such damage occurs, it is a conservator's job to fix damage and repair it using their own technical hand skills and a strict ethical code of practice to make sure any damage and repair is reversible and well documented. Preventive and interventive conservation together in tandem uphold the general health of the collections. So one of the main aspects of preventive conservation is monitoring the environment in which the collection is kept. So improper climate maintenance can lead to damage to a collection over time, as fluctuations in humidity and temperature can cause mold growth and expansion and contraction of vulnerable media. This means we keep a close eye on the temperature, relative humidity, and light where collection items are stored, read, and displayed. Because the Russell Library is a historic building, it's impossible to regulate the climate completely, so stabilizing the climate is key. To this end, we have dehumidifiers, and our display cases allow us to manage humidity internally. We also employ an array of tiny tag sensors that monitor data across our collection storage and display areas. Exposure to light over time is cumulative and it's irreversible. and so it can cause irreparable fading to items that have been exposed for too long. The library itself was designed before the invention of electricity, as Susan was telling us, so the windows allow for maximum internal illumination. Therefore, the light levels in the library have had to be carefully monitored and controlled. In order to prevent light damage, both to the books on the shelves and to those on display, the windows in the Russell Library have UV blocking film on them, as well as partially opaque blinds to block direct sunlight from falling on surfaces. Additionally, we have blue wool fade cards within the cases to monitor light impact, but we have a policy of covering the cases with opaque cloth covers when the library is not in use. When staff notice loose spines or boards on the books in our collection, these can be temporarily tied with unbleached cotton tying tape to prevent separation and loss. A more permanent protective step is a handmade archival board box, which keeps the book together and prevents further damage by reducing handling and abrasion by other books on the shelf. Boxes are also a great signal to staff that the item inside is vulnerable and requires extra care when handling. Boxes are also a good way to insulate a vulnerable item from the fluctuations of the surrounding climate. So all our archival collections are housed in folders within boxes as well. So now that we've talked a little bit about the wider collection practices and collection care practices in the Russell Library, I'm just going to briefly spotlight one of our special collections, then take you through the conservation treatment of one of its most remarkable objects. There we go. So the St. Canice's collection, this unique collection from St. Canice's Cathedral in Kilkenny, contains a large selection of early printed books, including 4 incunabula, a 1688 copy of Milton's Paradise Lost, and a Shakespeare's 4th folio. The collection belonged to Bishop Edward Morris, who was Bishop of Ossory in the 18th century. The collection is on long-term loan to Maynooth University from the representative church body of Ireland and had suffered damage over the years. Over the past year, the books in the St. Canice's collection have been individually cleaned, assessed, and measured for bespoke boxes, which will be made for the books in the poorest condition to help reduce risks associated with handling. One of the star items from the St. Canice's collection is a page printed by William Caxton. The page is a leaf from his edition of John Gower's Confessio Amantis, and in case you're interested, it is folio 94, lines 575 through 742 of Book 5, printed in 1483. Caxton is thought to have been the person who introduced the printing press to England in the late 1400s. He was the first printer to work primarily in the English language and is often likened to Gutenberg in terms of his importance to English printing. Copies of Caxton's printed works are rare and highly prized, and this example is one of only 2 Caxtons in Ireland. So the page had previously been framed and encapsulated in glass and had some minor tears, losses, and fraying along the edges, as well as some discoloration. I had to dismantle the frame and carefully remove the page from its encapsulation in order to treat the object. I gently surface cleaned it using a dry brush and a smoke sponge, then washed it several times to remove surface dirt and ingrain discoloration. Before washing the print, I had extensively tested both the ink and paper in order to make sure the discoloration was soluble in water and that the ink was not. So once I had determined that the wash would be safe for the ink and effective for the paper, it was ready to go. So shown in the photo is the capillary washing method I used for the project, where the object is placed on an absorbent material, which has one end in a tray of water. Capillary action then draws the water up through the object, taking with it any soluble dirt and discoloration. The process was repeated several times as there was a large amount of ingrained discoloration that would come out with each wash. Since the paper had lost a lot of its robustness and become very soft, I resized the page using a weak adhesive to restore some of its structural integrity before repairing the tears. The tears were repaired using a very lightweight Japanese tissue that had been toned using acrylic colors to better match the color of the page, which would make the repairs blend in visually with the paper. The page was then encapsulated in Mullaney to reduce handling risks while retaining both full visibility on both sides. Then it was fitted with its own bespoke box and standing display frame. And ta-da! So this is your before and after and encapsulation. The Caxton repair and rehousing is complete, and it is ready to be returned to the St. Canice's collection. It will be available to readers and researchers visiting our Special Collections reading room. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much for coming. Alex, Susan, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the Russell Library, hopefully very soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you very much, Susan and Alex, for superb presentations and such an insight into the Russell Library. We do hope that you'll soon be able to visit us in person in the Russell Library, COVID depending. And with that in mind, Elaine has all your names, so if there is a normally we would have Culture Night, for example, in September, but when there is next to visit, you will all be invited. Now we have time for 1 or 2 questions before the launch of the Sway exhibition. So if you want to put up your hand using one of the icons, or alternatively just unmute and speak. Okay, actually there is one in the chat box, if I can take it for Martin. It's for either Gretchen or Alexandra. A friend recently showed me a large family Bible from 1834, pages in mint condition, but cover has got damp though. Would you have any interest in having a look at it?
I wonder, is that from a conservation point of view? Do you want to talk about the conservation in relation to a cover being damp, Gretchen?
I can speak to that a little bit. So I would say that if you're interested in having somebody work on your family Bible, that might not necessarily be a project for us specifically, but if you go to the ICRI website, which is the Institution of Conservator Restorers in Ireland, there is a directory of freelance book and paper conservators who would be more than happy to take on the work. And that might be a really good place to start. And in the meantime, if anybody's looking to make sure that their stuff does not get wet, I would highly recommend keeping anything precious well away from outside walls and at least 12 inches off the floor to avoid any sort of flooding or any sort of dampness transfer from the outside.
Thank you, Gretchen. A lot of, there's thanks for that response and congratulations to everybody. A number of very positive emails. Any further questions here? And thanks again from Marie. Thank you. Well, perhaps then we'll draw that to a close. We're certainly on schedule, but I see our next speaker is here. And before that, I'll answer the question, can researchers visit the library? Yes, they can. And you need to just email the library. And are there any photographs on the details of the Russell Library? Yes, what publication would be good for that? Is it the Pugin one, Susan?
Yes, yes. So it's Pugin at Maynooth, the neo-Gothic contribution of AWN Pugin to Maynooth College, as I say, by Jean Meldon, Marion Lyons and Caroline Gallagher. And it's got an abundance of images in it for, you know, the whole of the St. Mary's Square. So a lot of information there, and so recommend that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Reverend Professor Michael Mullaney, President of St. Patrick's College, Maynooth. And Professor Mullaney is going to launch a Sway exhibition of publications by staff of St. Patrick's College, Maynooth and Maynooth University. So, yeah, you're on mute just now.
Yes. Thank you. We should be well used to this by now. Thanks, Helen, and I'm delighted to join you and all your colleagues, Elaine, Alexandra, Susan, and others from the Russell Library, and to mark the end of Heritage Week and also the launch of this collection online. I know that there have been a number of talks during the week which celebrated the the history of the college, its buildings, its natural habitat. I have no doubt that they brought together the lovely, also they were entertaining and excellent and informative. As John Paul Sheridan, my own colleague here in St. Patrick's, gave a talk on the College Chapel. Pat Watson, I see online here on the college buildings, and Stephen Seaman on the college grounds. So thanks to them for their contribution to Heritage Week in this week. We have a long tradition of adding to the body of knowledge through our publications. I'm delighted to launch this virtual exhibition of publications by our colleagues of Maynooth University and St. Patrick's College. I was delighted when I was looking at the online about how well represented we are on the exhibition this year. And what's striking about the exhibition is, which is now freely available online, is the scale, diversity and richness of the topics that have been written about, whether in literature, music, philosophy, faith and spirituality, poetry, the changing role of women in Irish and other societies, conflicts nationally and internationally, music, marriage, maps and data mining, and the topic which we're all grappling with at the moment, the COVID pandemic. So all the authors, these are some of the very, I've got to say, many areas which are eloquently covered in these publications, and I want to congratulate all the authors. So another aspect of the exhibition is the visually stunning images on the book covers. Many are works of art in their own right, and the exhibition gives a tremendous flavour to our publishing output, and of course you can consult the books yourselves at our university library. I want to congratulate again all the authors on their achievement, and I wish you all a continued success in your publishing, and I also want to wish all of you congratulations on putting together this exhibit online, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity in the coming year next year, please God, to have an in-person, on campus, in library exhibition and launch of this exhibition. So congratulations to one and all, delighted to be a part of this, and thank you for inviting me to launch this exhibition. Back to you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Professor Mullaney. Our next guest is Councillor Naoise O'Carroll, Mayor of Kildare, who will bring proceedings to a close for Heritage Week.
Gurmagatan, you can hear me, can you?
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. So Díomh agus muile buchas den Laurelin na Holscoile Sochtan an Gura Hort Tom events on of the Yera Shachtan na Haireachta. So good afternoon and many thanks to the University Library for inviting me to this event, and indeed to the closure of a very successful Heritage Week. The University Library has marked Heritage Week for a number of years, inviting people from the local community such as myself and beyond to visit and to view the beautiful grounds, the College Chapel and indeed the Russell Library. When COVID-19 hit in 2020, the library quickly adapted to operating in the virtual world, and last August ran a series of events for Heritage Week over Zoom, similar to this week. These events were so successful that this year the programme has been further developed, and this week has been a wonderful opportunity for all of us to enjoy the buildings and indeed the grounds. The presenters included Dr. John Paul Sheridan from St. Patrick's College, Maynooth, who provided 2 sessions on the magnificent College Chapel, and Stephen Seaman, who Reverend Professor mentioned, the ground supervisor who spoke on protecting and enhancing our natural heritage on campus. Indeed, the natural heritage has been of profound importance to the Maynooth community throughout the lockdown, when the college grounds remained open to the public to walk and to enjoy, for which we really are extremely grateful, and it was a great amenity for us to have here in the community, particularly during lockdowns, etc. Pat Watson, who I see here as well, local historian, shared with us her extensive knowledge of the history of St. Patrick's College, and the staff of the Russell Library, Alex, Susan, Gretchen, who shared with us their knowledge of the magnificent collections and also their work in preserving these collections so that future generations will be able to enjoy and learn from this rich heritage. It is fitting that the final event of such a successful week was a celebration by the President of St. Patrick's College, Reverend Professor Michael Mullaney, of recent publications. This scholarly output continues a long tradition. I'm delighted so many people were able to celebrate Heritage Week with the library, and I extend my congratulations to all involved. Agus cordgus mór le gachtainine a bhí bantucht leis an seachtain, agus le gachtainine atá rud scríte acu agus nóig an alíonn chomá. So gur míle mágah agus gur mágah as an cur a ríist.
Gur míle maith agus Nisha. Thank you very much for that. And at this point, I think it's time to bring Heritage Week to a close. So I want to thank all our speakers again. They really made this a terrific week. I want to thank Elaine, who organised Heritage Week, and it's been a massive undertaking, and it's gone so smoothly. Well done. And I want to thank all of you for coming. And as we said, hopefully we will see you in the library and on campus again soon. And we will keep in touch, and you'll be getting a feedback form. But when we have open events, we will let you know again. Thanks, everybody. Bye.